Hello there, folks. My name's Brains, and I'm the chief designer and engineer here at International Rescue. Welcome to the first in a series of briefings about some of the most advanced machinery in use in the 21st century. As agents of International Rescue, you have been granted security clearance by our commander, Jeff Tracy, but watch out for any suspicious activity during our briefing. You can never be too careful when there are enemies like the Hood on the loose. Now that we've taken care of the formalities, let's begin. In this briefing, we're going to be discussing the technical specifications of Thunderbird 1. Thunderbird 1 is the hypersonic first response craft used by International Rescue. It is piloted by Scott Tracy, the eldest of the Tracy brothers. Scott served in the U.S. Air Force and gained a lot of experience handling high-speed experimental craft, making him the perfect choice to pilot Thunderbird 1. Constructed at a top-secret purpose-built hangar, Thunderbird 1 was the first of the 5 primary international rescue craft to be completed, hence its designation. Thunderbird 1 stands 90 feet high and is stored under the Tracy Island Villa, accessed by a hidden walkway behind a rotating panel in the lounge. Standing with his back to the wall, Scott grips the lamp brackets on either side of him, causing the wall panel to rotate. He then transfers to a moving walkway, which delivers him to the cockpit in the nose cone of Thunderbird 1. As Scott changes into his duty uniform, the craft rolls down the ramp into the launch hangar. The hangar is located directly below the Tracy Island swimming pool, and this slides to one side to provide clearance for the craft to pass through. Once in position, Scott fires the motors, and Thunderbird 1 surges up into the sky. Scott can then transition the craft into horizontal flight mode as he speeds towards the source of the distress call. Thunderbird 1 can reach speeds of up to 15,000 miles per hour, giving Scott the best possible chance of reaching the danger zone and carrying out an assessment before further action is taken. When traveling at top speed, Thunderbird 1 flies with its variable geometry wings folded in, giving the craft a rocket-like profile. On arrival at the danger zone, Scott will usually be required to land and deploys Thunderbird 1's wings so that the wing-mounted landing gear may be used. The landing gear was originally designed with wheels attached, but a later retrofit replaced these wheels with the current landing pads. A powerful rocket motor helps slow the craft as it lands, useful when a pinpoint accurate landing is required. Thunderbird 1 is capable of handling many rescue scenarios without the need for heavy rescue support, thanks to the equipment arsenal at Scott's disposal. A powerful machine cannon is housed in the underside of the craft's nose and can be used to clear hazards and carry out demolition work. There is also a multi-purpose launch platform, which can be outfitted with a variety of mission-specific equipment, such as a fire suppression system and a battery of high-tensile spears. Thunderbird 1 is equipped with a versatile winch for airlifting trapped personnel or small vehicles, and this can also be used to stabilize damaged structures. Recent additions to Thunderbird 1's detection equipment include a sensitive metal detector, which can detect metal objects from a height of 1,000 feet, and a sonar probe system used for detecting stricken craft on the seabed. When hazardous situations prevent direct line of sight with people in distress, Scott can make use of Thunderbird 1's remote-controlled hovering camera. This small drone can withstand extreme heat and harsh conditions in order to relay video images back to Thunderbird 1. When the situation demands a more hands-on approach, Scott can disembark Thunderbird 1 and operate from the International Rescue Mobile Control Unit. Functioning as a self-contained command center, the Mobile Control Unit provides Scott with all the facilities necessary to direct many of the rescue situations he encounters. Pardon me for a moment, folks.
Brains, get down to Thunderbird 2 immediately. I'll explain later.
Right away, Mr. Tracy. I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed our briefing. So long for now. Brains here. Welcome to another episode of Century 21 Tech Talk. In this briefing, we're going to be discussing the technical specifications of Thunderbird 2. Thunderbird 2 is the heavy rescue transporter aircraft used by International Rescue. It is piloted by Virgil Tracy, the second eldest of the Tracy brothers. Virgil is a graduate of the Denver School of Advanced Technology with diplomas in mechanics and practical science. He later attended Tracy College and became a fully qualified astronaut. His skill with heavy machinery and extensive knowledge of mechanics makes him the ideal pilot for Thunderbird 2 and the various heavy rescue equipment it carries. Thunderbird 2 was adapted from a top-secret Tracy aerospace project codenamed Behemoth. Although our modifications to the craft have made it superior to the prototype in every way. Thunderbird 2 is 250 feet long and has an impressive wingspan of 180 feet. The gigantic craft is stored behind an artificial rock face under the cliff house at the end of the Tracy Island runway. Access to Thunderbird 2 is by way of a concealed entrance in the main lounge of the Tracy Island Villa. Virgil stands with his back to the portrait of Mr. Tracy's historic moon rocket, and the portrait rotates on the central pivot, sliding Virgil into the pilot entry chute. Virgil slides headfirst along the chute and is then rotated so that he proceeds feet first into Thunderbird 2's cockpit. As Virgil changes into his duty uniform, the equipment pods begin to move along under the craft until the desired pod is in position. Then the mighty airframe lowers over the pod and the aerodynamic shape of Thunderbird 2 is completed. Next, the cliff face retracts as the aircraft advances towards the runway. As I said before, Thunderbird 2 has an impressive wingspan, so the palm trees on either side of the runway have to be mechanically lowered in order to provide clearance through which the craft can move. Once Thunderbird 2 clears the palm trees, it comes to rest on a powerful hydraulic ramp which elevates to an angle to allow the craft to launch. This is much more fuel efficient than launching with its vertical thrusters. Thunderbird 2 typically cruises at 2,000 miles per hour, but can reach speeds of 5,000 miles per hour when required. Arriving at the danger zone, Virgil will often receive a message from Scott indicating the ideal landing site and will bring Thunderbird 2 into hover position before descending on its 4 powerful vertical thrusters. Once Thunderbird 2 has landed safely, Virgil raises the ship on its sturdy hydraulic legs to allow access to the pod. While outwardly identical, not all of the pods are the same inside. Pods 1, 2, 3, and 6 feature rear flaps in addition to the standard front flaps, and can be used to transport many different pieces of rescue machinery. Additionally, Pod 2 houses a set of mechanical grabs used to airlift stricken vehicles from hazardous situations. Pod 4 is designed to be deployed on water and is home to Thunderbird 4 and its launch system. It is equipped with buoyancy tanks and stabilizers to help it stay afloat even in the roughest of conditions. Pod 5 has its own onboard laboratory, with much of the equipment being duplicated from the main lab here on Tracy Island. While Thunderbird 2's primary purpose is to transport heavy rescue equipment in one of its pods, the craft itself is also equipped with a formidable array of life-saving equipment. Electromagnets, magnetic grabs, a winch system, and an escape capsule are carried in Thunderbird 2's forward equipment deck. As is also the case with Thunderbird 1, Thunderbird 2 is armed with a multi-purpose projectile launcher. The launcher is usually loaded with low-yield demolition missiles for clearing debris, though these can also be replaced with non-explosive missiles for use in unorthodox situations. The upper deck also houses the air-to-air rescue compartment. Like all of Thunderbird 2's equipment, the air-to-air rescue gear has been upgraded over time. Hello?
Oh, hi, Brains. You better get up here right away.
What's the matter, Gordon? An emergency call?
Not quite. Tintin's having trouble with her TV radio again.
Oh. Gee, I guess I can take a look at that for her.
Thanks, Brains. See ya.
Well, that brings us to the end of another episode of Century 21 Tech Talk. I hope you enjoyed learning about Thunderbird 2. See you next time. Bye-bye for now. Hi, folks. Welcome back to Century 21 Tech Talk with me, Brains. In this briefing, we're going to be discussing the technical specifications of Thunderbird 3. Thunderbird 3 is the single-stage-to-orbit reusable space rocket used by International Rescue. It is piloted by Alan Tracy and John Tracy in a monthly rotation of duty. We'll talk a little about John when we discuss Thunderbird 5. Alan is the youngest of the Tracy brothers, with a love of excitement and adventure. He is a gifted astronaut, having completed his formal training following a previous course at Colorado University. Alan was once involved in the world of motor racing, but gave up his promising career in order to dedicate his life to international rescue. Thunderbird 3 is a unique craft adapted from a Tracy Aerospace prototype vessel, the Neptune 1, originally built for Project Trident. Thunderbird 3 stands 287 feet high, making it the tallest of the Thunderbird craft on Earth. It remains on standby deep beneath the Tracy Island Roundhouse and can be accessed via a couch in the lounge of the Tracy Villa. Alan sits on the couch with his co-pilot, often Scott. Mr. Tracy activates the transit mechanism and the couch descends into the bowels of the island, being replaced moments later by an identical couch from below. The couch comes to rest on a bogie truck, which then races through a connecting tunnel to the launch silo before coming to a halt under the huge bulk of Thunderbird 3. A hydraulic pole raises the couch through a hatch in the base of the craft and deposits it into the lounge deck. The pole is then retracted and the craft's hatch is sealed. Alan ascends to the flight deck by means of the main elevator, begins the essential pre-flight checks, and opens a concealed launch bay cover in the center of the roundhouse. After a final check that the auxiliary crew are secured in the lounge deck, Alan fires Thunderbird 3's powerful rocket engines, and the craft blasts off its launch pad, soaring up and out through the roundhouse and into the atmosphere, bound for space. Thunderbird 3 has the most powerful propulsion system of any craft in the International Rescue Fleet, with a launch thrust of 4.5 million pounds and a maximum emergency acceleration of 10 G. It is a force to be reckoned with. As you know, traveling in the vacuum of space is very different to conventional atmospheric flight. Thunderbird 3 has a total of 56 control rockets situated around its frame, used for precision course corrections and delicate rescue maneuvers. It is primarily used to ferry supplies and equipment to Thunderbird 5 in permanent geostationary Earth orbit. It docks with the space station through the use of a purpose-built boarding tube. Transfer of personnel and supplies is aided by artificial gravity plating common to both craft. In addition to supplying Thunderbird 5, Thunderbird 3 is also equipped to perform rescue operations in Earth orbit and deep space. The craft's hull is composed of superhardened Helium extract X, meaning that it is capable of withstanding colossal heat and radiation, even in close proximity to the sun. The radio complex on Thunderbird 3 can be used to project a powerful safety beam, a radio beam that can be used to override the reaction control systems in stricken space vessels, bringing them back under control again. The forward airlock, accessed from the flight deck, is used in the event Alan needs to perform a spacewalk to retrieve personnel in distress. The airlock is also used when an inspection of Thunderbird 3's exterior is deemed necessary while the craft is in space. Thunderbird 3 is equipped with a highly sophisticated space scanner, finely tuned to allow the detection of small objects in space. This is particularly useful when searching for personnel who have become accidentally separated from their space vehicles and are drifting in the void. One vital feature of Thunderbird 3's design is its cargo bay, including a manipulator armature. This can be used to stabilize other space vehicles that have lost attitude control, and is also equipped with interchangeable tools for rescue and repair tasks. Laboratory, Brain speaking.
Tintin and I were just putting the apple pies in the oven and the darn fuse blew.
No problem, Mrs. Tracy. I'll be there in a moment. Well, folks, I guess that brings us to the end of another Tech Talk briefing. I must be on my way now, as Grandma needs some assistance in the kitchen. See you next time. Hello again, folks. Brains here. Welcome to another episode of Century 21 Tech Talk. In this briefing, we're going to be discussing the technical specifications of Thunderbird 4. Thunderbird 4 is the underwater submersible used by International Rescue. It is piloted by Aquanaut Gordon Tracy, the second youngest of the Tracy brothers. Gordon, like his brothers, is a trained astronaut, but unlike the other Tracy boys, he completed his space training after International Rescue was formed. While his brothers looked to the stars in their formative years, Gordon became fascinated with the ocean. Serving with both the submarine service and later the World Aquanaut Security Patrol, Gordon furthered his skills as an aquanaut at every opportunity. However, it was his love of the ocean that nearly cost Gordon his life when an experimental hydrofoil he was testing crashed at high speed. It was during Gordon's long recovery that Mr. Tracy acquired the Silver Fin, a prototype craft Gordon had been testing during his time with the Wasp. The Silver Fin was retired from trials and covertly adapted deep within a Tracy aerospace facility. Under the supervision of myself and later Gordon, when he was fully recovered, the modifications were completed, and the craft that had once been the Silver Fin was now Thunderbird 4. Thunderbird 4 is only 30 feet long, making it the smallest of the 5 main Thunderbird craft. However, what it lacks in size, it more than makes up for in speed and maneuverability. The submarine can cruise on the surface of the ocean at 40 knots, and while traveling below the surface, it can attain speeds of 160 knots and reach depths of almost 30,000 feet. Thunderbird 4 is usually carried to the danger zone aboard Pod 4, one of the 6 pods carried by Thunderbird 2. Gordon accesses Thunderbird 2 via the passenger elevator concealed in the Tracy Island villa and enters the huge transport craft while Virgil is completing pre-flight checks. When the freighter ship reaches the danger zone, Virgil will release the pod and, cushioned by a series of thrusters, it drops into the water below. When the pod comes to rest, Gordon releases the flap and engages the horizontal motors on the launch platform, moving it into position. He then fires the motors, and Thunderbird 4 shoots down the ramp and into the sea. In the event that Thunderbird 2 is out of action, Thunderbird 4 can be launched directly from Tracy Island. Gordon enters the pod and boards Thunderbird 4. He then uses the emergency hover jets to ease the craft out of the pod to the small door in the cliff face used by the Tracy family's private aircraft. Guiding the submersible along the runway, Gordon completes a series of checks and readies the craft for sea operations, lowers the end of the island's landing stage, and Thunderbird 4 slips down into the water. The Thunderbird 4 is equipped with an array of rescue gear that surpasses the equipment of vessels many times its size. The bulk of the rescue equipment is located in the bow of the craft, behind the high-powered light trough. It's very useful for locating objects in murky waters. A pair of hydraulic rams extend from the outermost equipment tubes and can be used to dislodge stricken vessels. The rams incorporate electromagnets, allowing vessels or debris to be hauled clear if direct contact is possible. When a more delicate approach is required, a precision laser cutter enables Gordon to cut through almost any kind of debris obstructing the rescue effort. If Gordon locates a vessel losing oxygen, he will fire the long-range air drill, a magnetic drill head trailing an air hose. Once the drill has penetrated the hull of the target vessel, Gordon activates the air supply to buy time for the occupants to be rescued. This remarkable equipment can also be fitted with a paralyzer nerve gas supply for use when the occupants of another vessel are less than friendly. Thunderbird 4 carries a battery of variable yield missiles, mainly used for demolition purposes, although they work equally well when deployed in self-defense. Many of you may wonder how Thunderbird 4 is retrieved after a mission has been completed. Well, it's really quite simple. First, Gordon remotely extends the launch ramp from the pod so that it rests in the water. Next, he maneuvers Thunderbird 4 into position just above the ramp, facing forward. He then gently lowers the craft onto the ramp, where it is clamped in place, and the ramp is retracted. Finally, he closes the pod flap, and Thunderbird 2 descends to the surface of the water, clamps the pod into position, and performs a vertical launch before returning to International Rescue Headquarters. And that's just about all there is to know about Thunderbird 4. Hey, what do you know? We made it to the end of this briefing without being interrupted. Oh, I just had to say it, didn't I? See you around, folks. Bye-bye. Hi, folks. Welcome back to Century 21 Tech Talk with me, Brains. In this briefing, we're going to be discussing the technical specifications of Thunderbird 5. Thunderbird 5 is the massive monitoring space station used by International Rescue. It is manned by John Tracy and his younger brother Alan in monthly spells of duty. John is the middle child of the Tracy brothers and studied astrocommunications at Harvard University. He was also the first of the Tracy brothers to qualify as an astronaut and has always been fascinated by outer space and the universe we live in. Thunderbird 5 was the final Thunderbird craft to be completed and was constructed in Earth's orbit under the guise of an ordinary weather satellite. Once the regular construction crews completed their work and returned to Earth, the Tracy family took over, modifying the satellite with sophisticated electronics, receivers, and transmitters of every variety imaginable. At a colossal 400 feet in length, Thunderbird 5 dwarfs the other craft in the fleet, even the mighty Thunderbird 3. But then it's got to support a lone crewman for a month at a time and have plenty of room for other personnel when repairs are required. Access to Thunderbird 5 is by the boarding tube and airlock, specially adapted for use by Thunderbird 3. Although, in emergency situations, the airlock can be accessed by any craft with a universal docking collar. I once researched the notion of adding a space elevator to Thunderbird 5, but the engineering problems of such a system outweighed any potential gains. So that particular project is on hold, at least for now. Thunderbird 5's primary power source is a bank of atomic batteries located on the lower deck of the station. These batteries are serviced by Thunderbird 3 at regular intervals and are supplemented by solar power cells. Positioned in geostationary orbit 22,500 miles above the Pacific Ocean, Thunderbird 5 has a reception range of 100 million miles. This means that it can pick up a distress call from anywhere on Earth. A network of 6 smaller satellites bounce signals from other parts of the globe to the main receiver on Thunderbird 5. The sophisticated electronic filters used in the craft's automatic receiver unit are programmed to detect words like help and disaster in any language. When a suspected distress call is received, it is routed to the audio transmitter in the main monitoring control room so that John can decide whether further action needs to be taken. Of course, John may not be in the monitoring room when the call comes through, so it is also relayed to other key locations within Thunderbird 5. Other areas include the sleeping quarters, Astrodome, sickbay, lounge, secondary monitoring room, and life support suite. As is the case with the other international rescue craft, secrecy plays a critical role in the successful operation of Thunderbird 5. The station is equipped with a standard issue Midas anti-detection system, hiding the satellite from the world's tracking stations. A meteor deflector array protects the craft from accidental strikes. Direct communication with Tracy Island and the remaining Thunderbird craft is possible by way of a coded frequency antenna. The receiver station is located just off the coast of Tracy Island, and periodic maintenance is carried out to ensure the system works correctly. Thunderbird 5's role is essential to the smooth running of international rescue, and it could be disastrous if anything were to prevent distress calls being received from Earth or transmitted back to base. To minimize the risk of communications being lost between the danger zone and base, I developed the NA-11 portable transmitter unit. This nifty piece of equipment has a self-contained power supply and an independent transmitter, ensuring communication is maintained with Thunderbird 5 even in the event of a power failure at the rescue site. Look at the time! Excuse me for one moment, folks. Laboratory calling Mr. Tracy.
Hello, Brains?
Mr. Tracy, I just thought I'd remind you there's a special telecast about the latest Zero-X mission in 15 minutes from now.
Yes, I hadn't forgotten, but thanks anyway.
No problem, Mr. Tracy. Laboratory out. Well, folks, that brings us to the end of this particular series of briefings. But I hope to have the privilege of speaking with you again soon. So from me and everyone here at International Rescue, thank you very much for your attention. Goodbye. Hello again, folks. Brains here. Welcome to another episode of Century 21 Tech Talk. In this briefing, we're going to be discussing the technical specifications of FAB One. FAB One is London agent Lady Penelope's Rolls Royce, but it is far from an ordinary automobile. Perhaps the best person to tell you more about it is the man who operates the vehicle, International Rescue's other London agent, Aloysius Parker.
Hello, everyone. Parker speaking. Brains has asked me to give you the lowdown on FAB One's classified gear, and I'm more than happy to oblige. As Lady Penelope's aide-de-camp, I'm in charge of driving this here machine, and a nifty bit of kit it is too. It's 21 feet long, big for the average motor, even in the 21st century. With my foot hard down, I've got it moving at over 200 miles an hour. Her ladyship did that once too, but that particular assignment is probably best forgotten. A souped-up engine is just the tip of the iceberg. The entire chassis is bullet and bomb-proof. Pretty handy when some diabolical villain is up to their dirty tricks. The front end of the car is packed with some really hefty hardware. The radiator grille houses an high-powered machine cannon, just the thing for shooting down hostile heli-jets. There are also 2 machine guns, one on either side of the car, hidden behind the headlights. These guns can be aimed using a special targeting sight that pops up when the guns are armed. The famous Spirit of Ecstasy acts as a signal locator, capable of tracking small devices placed on a target person or vehicle. Now, how about we move to the rear of the vehicle? It's just as impressive as the front end, that's for sure. For starters, we have 2 smokescreen canisters, ideal for loosey-nosy blighters trailing FAB One. Next, we have the oil slick dispenser, a real slippery customer for anyone who gets too close for comfort. Then, if they really haven't taken the hint and look to be bad trouble, The pair of rear-facing machine guns will sort them out with no problems at all. If we happen across someone trapped in a tight spot, FAB One is equipped with a pair of harpoon launchers attached to solid steel cables, strong enough to move most of the obstacles we're likely to face in our unique line of work. And I almost forgot. The boot of the car has an hydraulic lift platform that can be raised to gain access to high places. As you'd imagine, FAB One spends most of its time on the road, but the vehicle is adapted to traverse other kinds of terrain just as easily. The underside of the car is almost as interesting as the top. A set of hydrofoils can be lowered when we need to travel on water, and we haven't brought FAB 2. It may weigh 3 tons, but thanks to Brain's engineering know-how, FAB One floats like a dream. When we're out on the water, a gas turbine aquajet propels us along at a nippy 50 knots, which is even faster than Thunderbird 4's surface cruising speed. One of these days, I really must ask Gordon for a race. But I digress. If we're visiting colder locations and there's a good deal of snow, we can lower the skis and use them to get about. It certainly beats riding on an horse-drawn sleigh, I can tell you. Like all other international rescue craft, FAB One is equipped with long-range transmitters and telecall facilities, so Lady Penelope can keep in touch with headquarters and the other Thunderbird machines. Her ladyship and I are both very fond of FAB One, and you can imagine how we felt when it met its demise during the Skyship One disaster. However, Brains was able to rebuild the car from scratch, and now it's as good as new, with some improvements over the original. He even joked about adding a flight mode, but I'm not sure there was a square inch of space left for it. Brains Laboratory, Parker here.
Parker, we are off on a mission again.
Very good, m'lady. I'll meet you on the jetty. Well, that about wraps things up nicely. I must be off now. Another international rescue mission is just about to begin. But I hope you found this little presentation useful. Until next time then, cheerio.